Right, I think we're slowing down a little bit on the participant list and we're getting to 9:34. Mike, think we're ready to crack on, carry on? Right, just a bit of an introduction to myself and the session today. My name is Jack Rigby. Good morning, Borodar. I'm the head of technology here at the Centre for Digital Public Services. Obviously, as head of technology, I've got a bit of a special interest in AI and the work that we're doing with AI, working very closely with Pete on the other webinars and Mike and the work that's been put together. And very interested in AI, the applications it can have with services, public services in Wales. I've got a bit more of a kind of practical call to action at the end that we'll loop back round to that you can get involved with us. But for now, we're focusing on procuring artificial intelligence in the public sector, and we couldn't think of any better partners to come share our platform, speak to you today than our partners at Kershaw Commercial. And we've got Warren joining us today, and we'll be handing over to him in a second. As I said, this is the third session that we have been running on artificial intelligence. We have got another session already on what is artificial intelligence with the Alan Turing Institute, which is very informative, and we've gone over the public sector equality duty. So 2 sessions, all available up on YouTube. Links will be shared in the chat from Mike and our colleagues. But for now, I think I'm going to hand over to Warren and David to introduce themselves and give a bit more detail on what we'll be doing today.
Thank you, Jack. I'm just going to get our slides up, so please just momentarily bear with me, and this should be coming through as we speak. So give me a confirmation that you can see the Procuring AI on the public sector screen. Nice and pink. That's good. Thumbs up. Okay, thank you. So yeah, very briefly, thank you for the opportunity to join you today. My name is Warren Smith, and I'm joined by my colleague David. And we are first going to just give some brief introductions to who we are, and then we'll crack on. So David, if you could start us off, please.
Thank you, Warren. Morning, all. Borodar, thank you very much for allowing us to talk and give our experience of commercial and tech and in this area. We are excited to be in your third webinar of this series, so thank you, and thanks to Jack and his colleagues at CDPS. We are fresh-faced from yesterday's ProcureX, which is the annual procurement conference held in Cardiff. We were there yesterday, and it was great for me to attend and see suppliers, providers, industry innovators, as well as people from the procurement and commercial profession. And there is genuinely a buzz in Wales, or there was yesterday at the event. There were some very traditional suppliers there, sort of physical office suppliers and vehicles, but there was also some tech suppliers, and all very keen to work with the Welsh public sector more. Those suppliers are either based in Wales now or would like to create some businesses in Wales and employ Welsh people, and it was great to be there. On that note, I sort of just mentioned suppliers and providers, and what we're going to talk about today. It'd be great if you, once you're hearing from us, if you have that hat on, thinking about suppliers are only suppliers when they are supplying. They are provided initially, they then may become interested bidders, they may become bidders, and then they may then become suppliers. And it's important to do that. We speak to many public sector organisations around the world, in fact, and many of them just presume the public sector will just give them work, and the supply market will want to work with that public sector entity. But actually, in fact, we're now seeing that the public sector organisation needs to work more with enticing the market to provide. It's been great for me to be here today because actually I've been involved with CDPS from a few years back, actually, and it's great to see from its initial inception that it's matured and now thinking about this subject and the commercial principles and the commercial and procurement matters you need to consider when looking at AI. And for me, this follows very much into making sure that Wales itself is both resilient and prosperous for now and in the future, for the future generations. So yeah, thank you, CDPS, for allowing us to talk. For me, I'm going to pass to Warren in a second, but it'd be great just to continually think about public service, digital public goods, the public person follow the money, and also data and information exchange. They're sort of four main principles that I'd like you all to consider. And lastly, I'd say during this presentation or conversation that Warren and I have, please feel free to drop questions. The more questions, the better. And in particular, for me, it'd be great to hear what the risks in your mind are for this subject. It'd be great to start thinking about that. And should we get enough, we'll come back to CDPS and provide our views on how to address those risks. So thank you very much, and over to you, Warren.
Thank you, David. So yeah, my name is Warren Smith. I'm a partner at Kershaw. I'm also the main lead for the KEED project, which is for the Welsh Government in terms of its Procurement Centre of Excellence. And we were very much excited to be at the Go Awards as finalists last night in Cardiff. And so, yeah, I'm particularly interested in exploring, and I'll go through this in today's session, the importance of kind of taking some fundamental approaches to technology, irrespective of what that technology is. And obviously this session is specifically focused on artificial intelligence, but there are some really important things to be doing that lay the ground for being able to more confidently approach new and emerging technologies in a sustainable way. So I'm sure, and I hope that we'll have some questions around that as we go through. So moving on. The first section is around just kind of setting the scene in terms of both the digital and commercial context within the Welsh public sector. So hopefully participants today will be more than familiar with the digital service standards for Wales. I think this is, and I'll be coming back to this throughout the presentation, but for us, this is a really fundamental kind of overarching framing of the important things that need to be considered when approaching digital data and technology services within the Welsh context. It has a number of useful links in there that bind the rest of these things together, such as there's the last point here, the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act, which is absolutely critical. But in terms of the commercial and procurement side of things, this is a changing landscape within Wales, and actually quite recently changing, and due to change more over the next 12 months or so. So in terms of the procurement regulations, we have the Public Contract Regulations 2015, which will transition into the Procurement Act 2023, which received royal assent only a week or two ago, so very fresh. Just preceding that, we had the Social Partnerships and Public Procurement Wales Act 2023, also received royal assent. And we have still to receive royal assent, the Health Service Procurement Wales Bill. Now, all of these pieces of legislation and bills will sit alongside and be very much part of the broader framing of the Wales Procurement Policy Statement, and as already mentioned, the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act 2015. What's important here is that actually they are all complementary, and it's really key that we look at the kind of the intersections between the regulatory landscape and also the policy landscape and the standards landscape within Wales. So I'll be coming back to each of these as we go through. I didn't include links to the regulations because that's quite a lot of detail, but these are all published in the public domain, and if you want to get intimately familiar with them, then I would suggest reading them. But certainly the first place to start would be the Digital Service Standard for Wales, and point one of which covers the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act 2015. So with that contextual setting, let's move on to the next section, which is all about the importance of what we consider to be situational awareness, and this is really key in an ever-changing landscape of changing technology in not just the public sector, but generally in terms of innovation. So here, just move there a bit. So showing my age a little here, there's a quote from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. slightly light-hearted perspective here, but it's when it comes to new and emerging technologies, this could not be more accurate, and increasingly so with the ever rapid pace of development and innovation. So here it is important just to kind of pause and take stock of what is going on, and also to scan the horizon for what's likely to come downstream. And as I say, things are developing at an ever increasing rate of change. It's also important to do this in order to be able to discern between the hype, and there is a lot of hype around some of these new emerging technologies, and it's really critical that you understand how to approach those different technologies depending on where they are in their evolution of maturity. And I'll come back to that in just a second. But just to kind of give an illustration of that, within the last 12 months or so, actually since kind of ChatGPT emerged as the new and exciting thing, all the hyperscale cloud providers now have commoditized offerings for generative AI within their infrastructure as a service offerings. So you can see across Amazon Bedrock, Microsoft Azure OpenAI, and Google Cloud Platform are all providing these within, as I said, that commoditized service. So what once was considered like very exciting and innovative now has moved along the kind of evolutionary curve towards more commoditized technology capabilities. So in terms of understanding that path of evolution is happening, it's really key that we don't inadvertently kind of lock ourselves into any technology, or indeed any contractual obligation to consume that technology without an understanding of where that is in its kind of maturity curve. And just to illustrate that,
Warren, just to
sorry, yeah, please.
mind, I think it's important to remember a real life sort of situation. Only 10 years ago, and 11 years ago, 2012, 2013, where you and I were working at Network Rail, where they wanted to introduce tablets, the offering Rail Better Information Services. And that is a real life example. We were having similar concerning calls and sessions back then. There was a new tech new technology out, and the market wanted to provide. The provision side was keen to make the public sector better. And I remember at the time you and I were having very similar conversations about the pros and cons of tablets, and we could see them and touch them and feel them then. So that made us feel a little bit safer and happier. But still, we spent quite a bit of time as a whole community, both the tech leads, the owners of the public purse, us procurement commercial folk, and we actually worked with the market to understand the concerns in terms of data capture, data retention, and also the commercial. So I just thought it'd be interesting, because it's often we forget we've kind of done this thought process before. And just going back to this slide here, where you said just pause and just think what this could mean to you. And it goes back to the point I made at the start, with really keen to hear from people and the risks that they have in their mind, and collectively we should try and address them.
That's a very good point, David. And the importance there of interoperability and the use of open standards and open data to actually don't tie yourself into a particular technology. And in that example that you used around, like, don't over-specify devices, actually allow for different devices that could be used, but making sure that the data and information can flow between systems accordingly. So yeah, quite right. So in terms of like how we help to improve that situational awareness, cannot overemphasize enough the importance of multidisciplinary and cross-functional teams bringing their different perspectives into the shared kind of understanding of what the problem space is. And one way of doing that is one of several kind of techniques, but it's a technique that's suggested within the guidance within the Technology Code of Practice and the Service Manual, which is referred to from within the Digital Service Standards for Wales, is around the use of value chain mapping. And I'll come back onto this in the next slide as a way of illustrating what that means. Doesn't really matter what this value chain map is. It's actually a Wardy map. This is available through Creative Commons. But what's fundamental here is that whatever this system is, it's made up of lots of different kind of component parts, different technologies, different capabilities and services, which will all be in some shape or form on a different position in terms of their relative maturity. On the left of the x-axis, we have things that are new and emerging in terms of the genesis. So this could certainly be where generative AI was in, say, even just like 6 or 12 months ago. But through competition, supply and demand and innovation, those technologies will be driven from the left of the axis through to the right of the x-axis, moving more towards commoditized utility services, and therefore you should be approaching these with appropriate methods and techniques. So where it's highly on the left, then we want to minimize the cost of change, and therefore the techniques that we use to do that would be more agile. Whereas over on the right-hand side, we want to minimize deviation from the standards, and therefore we might be using approaches such as Six Sigma. But also, in terms of contracting, we would take a different approach. If it's fast changing, it might be variable costing or time and materials, and moreover onto the right into the unit costing. So again, this helps us to avoid the situation where we might be inadvertently locking ourselves in, unless we know what the evolution is of that particular technological component, and indeed the relationships between different components within that kind of value chain. And really what's critical on this map also is in terms of the value chain axis on the Y. So how close to the user need is the particular technology, or how invisible might that technology be to meeting that user need. But in all, they all have some kind of connection in order to meet a user need. This isn't a workshop on value chain mapping, but there are resources available to help to navigate what that means to help make better decisions. But really, back to the situational awareness, it's really key that you also use techniques to help improve your understanding of what works and what doesn't work, based on the maturity of that particular technology. So prototyping here is really critical, because it allows you to kind of test some of your riskiest assumptions, and also to get something in front of users that's useful and valuable for feedback to inform further iteration as quickly as possible. So that's really important to help with that, that rapid learning, based on however that technology can be applied into your overall estate. And then really, I think this is also the final point on this slide, is design for constant evolution. So expect that things will change, and they will change at an ever increasing pace. Therefore, take an approach which allows you to take advantage of that evolution and innovation as it happens. And like I said, don't kind of tie yourself into something which prevents your ability to innovate, iterate, and get something useful to your users. And I think this is really key within the service standards for Wales to say that technology decisions should be user-led, to allow the team, the multidisciplinary team, to make the best decisions about what works and the simplest approaches to meeting user needs for the users of their particular services. So if any of the participants aren't familiar with the service standards for us, then I would certainly recommend start there, and then come back to any of the other points that we're referring to within this presentation.
Warren, I just wanted to bring up, if you don't mind,
Please.
We're talking about procurement commercial here, so we need to be very aware. I know we're going to come on to some slides further down about the points around internal, connected, external systems, players, providers, knowledge, people. It's all part of that wider ecosystem. And Warren, myself, and our team, we talk about being very proactive in your market engagement, and we will talk about this shortly. But just to recap to everyone, procurement is the process of interacting and receiving tenders and quotes, but it's very important that you think about how you talk with the market to have a better understanding. Warren mentioned multidisciplinary team. You may find yourself in a multi-vendor delivery team as well. That brings other complications, especially if you've got some incumbents that frankly don't touch or don't know much at all about AI, and there's this pressure that you may be putting on them. So whilst you're thinking about a multidisciplinary team, which may be mostly internally heavy with maybe a sprinkle of external, also start thinking about multi-vendor delivery and what that means for you, and your authority obligations. Often we find in the world of commercial that we're very quick to point at the supplier and they have not achieved their contractual obligations. But as public sector bodies, you are also obliged to make sure that you can achieve what you said you'd achieve. So just a little bit of a tip there from me.
Thanks, David. And yeah, I'll be referring back to those points throughout the next kind of segment of this, because as a trailed at the beginning, that while this is about procuring AI, actually there's some really fundamentals that need to be in place in order to make good technology decisions, irrespective of what that technology is. But there are certainly some very specific considerations given the nature of AI. So just going to cover some of those things now. And lo and behold, another reference to the Digital Service Standard for Wales. So I think, yeah, as I said, start here. And see how that applies to your own kind of contextual setting, your own organisation, your own team, and then see are there any gaps that you might have identified as a result of what the service standards are telling you here. But something which already exists and was published several years ago is the guidelines for AI procurement, which were published by the Office for Artificial Intelligence, UK government. It's very useful. It was a collaborative effort involving several different government departments, including Government Digital Service, Crown Commercial Services, and others. And it includes some work that was with the World Economic Forum as well, and I'll come back to that. But what's useful here is that it does provide very specific considerations that need to be addressed throughout the commercial life cycle. And I've included here for reference, which I'll come back to, around pre-commercial as well. So firstly, and the kind of 4 stages that it uses here are around preparation and planning, so pre-procurement, the publication of the requirements, so that's the beginning of the procurement process, the selection, evaluation, and award, so that's going through that process that David just mentioned to get you to the point where you're in a position to award a contract, and then when you actually start spending money, the implementation of the contract and the ongoing management. So together, these 4 elements represent the full commercial, and if it's a pre-commercial consideration, then the pre-commercial life cycle. So now, in terms of preparation and planning, the AI procurement guidelines talks about these different 5 elements. So multidisciplinary teams, great to see this front and center within that section. Cannot overemphasize the importance of this approach at the beginning, from the beginning, and throughout the entire process. Data assessment and governance. This applies to AI procurement, but equally it applies to any technology and digital project where there's a data element, and it would be surprising to find that there wouldn't be a data element within a technology or digital project. So make sure that the understanding is there of what needs to be done to ensure good governance for that. Wherever I've put a square bracket around AI, it usually means that actually you still need to do this irrespective of if it's for AI or not. So an AI impact assessment, this is very important to understand how the AI or indeed any technology will have an impact on both users and also the existing technological architecture that's in place within your organization. Here we talk about preliminary market engagement. So this is where we actually start to have constructive conversations with the market before the procurement, and also deciding what's the most appropriate procurement approach and what route to markets are available to help you get to the right contract, the right providers of those capabilities. The next stage within the AI procurement guidelines talks about publication, and this focuses heavily on the requirements drafting. Now, I would say that actually this whole section should really be in the previous element around pre-procurement planning, because a lot of this information is what should be being shared with the market, even if it's like incomplete, and certainly don't aim for perfection. Share this as early as you can, as early as you have some information to share with the market, because this is where you start to be open and honest about, well, these are the problems we're trying to solve. these are the user needs that aren't currently being met by the existing technologies or data, and these are the outcomes we're trying to achieve by taking this approach. Equally, talk about the areas that you don't currently have answers to. What are the riskiest assumptions you're currently making that you would like to gain answers to, or some steer from the market? So I would really recommend that whatever's in the AI procurement guidelines within this publication stage, bring that forward to help inform a constructive and meaningful conversation with the market way in advance of the actual procurement taking place. And that shouldn't just be a one-off exercise. We recommend doing a series of market engagement events, initially starting with like a one-to-many open broadcast, and that could be in the form of a webinar such as this, but then it's perfectly possible to go into one-to-one sessions, as long as then the information that's being captured as part of those sessions is kind of anonymized and shared openly with all participants, so that nobody can claim that they've been given any unfair advantage or disadvantage. And so there's probably a whole masterclass on that in alone, so I won't go into too much depth on that. But yeah, these are all the points that are included in the procurement guidelines for drafting requirements. And as I said, bring those points into your pre-market engagement as well. Then it goes into the selection, evaluation, and award section. And I've kind of square bracketed the AI-specific elements here, because actually these are all sensible considerations for any kind of technology, digital or data project or program that you may have. I just wanted to also include here a reference to a very interesting blog post titled "From Team to Allies: How Government Service Teams Can Work Together to Reduce Inequalities." So here we're actually, this is talking about the potential for biases to kind of feature within service assessments. So not specifically to AI here, but actually the importance of taking multidisciplinary and a diverse approach to whoever's involved in different stages of the kind of the delivery life cycle. So yeah, just worth having a read of that blog post there as well. And also the point here around don't over-engineer your requirements. So actually expect that what you believe you understand on day one could well be different on day 21. So back to the point around designing for constant evolution, allow for things to adapt as you go through the delivery process, and expect that things will change. And that's why it's really important that your contracting approach should allow for that iterative and incremental learning. And so, yeah, don't kind of overly tie yourself into something which you can quite quickly prove isn't the right avenue to take.
Warren, if you don't mind, just to pick up on a point you made there about contractual approach. So, I mean, when we mention contractually in our personal lives, all of us get a bit nervous and scared. And I think whilst procurement exists to form contracts, a good sort of example, a good sort of recommendation I'd make forward is actually think the step before contractually, think commercially, what is most commercially viable for both entities or all parties, in fact. And those commercial elements will then result in the contractual forms. The commercial elements, especially with something which is, believe it or not, this is a new and novel topic for most people, although there are suppliers out there that have been established for quite some time. This is still a new and novel subject, and the commercials around this will be all about delivery, data, also speed, security, and the ability to scale up and scale down on the usage. So consider those before you start going into the actual formal contractuals. And Warren mentioned earlier about sort of market engagement, how to do it. It's really important that you think about that and don't be too frightened and don't think you can't do it. It's actually a really sensible way to invest public money. The more and more I get into sort of this subject, the more and more I think about investing public money rather than just spending it. And it'd be great for you to have that same mindset when you're thinking about this subject and Wales and the future of Wales and beyond.
100%. Because yeah, actually, at this stage of once the contract's awarded, that's when money actually starts to be spent. But the decisions made upstream will have a very direct impact on how that value for money, social value for money, is realised. So yeah, it's really key. There's some points here within the AI procurement guidelines on contract implementation, ongoing management, that again are just good practice for any technology decisions and management. So take time and care to onboard new suppliers in line with good practice. Obviously, we want to set up the beginning of the contract up for success, for constructive relationships, focus on joint delivery. There's a point here around being aware of where there could be costs incurred at any stage of the whole life of the contract. So, although it's included within this contract implementation and ongoing management section, those considerations should again really be brought right up front to say that when we're thinking about cost, we're not just thinking about the kind of the cost of delivery. We're actually thinking about the entire whole life, including through like exit and end of life, and sort of disposal and what happens after that. So yeah, that should also be a part of informing your early market engagement as well. Furthermore, on contract implementation, ongoing management, there are some very specific points around process-based governance and auditability and model testing for AI, and so definitely worth drilling into those within the guidelines. But the final 2 points around knowledge transfer and training and end of life, these apply irrespective of what technology you're buying. We would always recommend that you build into the contract that your supplier partner helps to build internal capability and capacity through the life of the contract by transferring knowledge and supporting upskilling as you go through. And also, when it comes to end of life, don't just wait to the end of life for your exit planning. Think about exit and plan for exit right up front, so that everybody's on the same page. What happens as you approach the end of the contract life, and what are the obligations to have a graceful end to that contract. So that's a kind of it in terms of the procurement guidelines, the AI procurement guidelines as published. There are some other elements to that which I'll come back to. So we just wanted to say, look, don't worry, you're not alone. There are other people that's doing work in this space, but like I say, it is a fast changing and emerging space. Everybody is talking about generative AI at the moment, so there's no shortage of sources when you simply Google that on the internet. So other search engines are available. So just in terms of, I mentioned some pre-commercial elements. So the Small Business Research Initiative, or SBRI, which has been set up to support pre-commercial approaches, where it's helping kind of public sector challenge owners who have a particular challenge that there may not be a commercially viable solution already existing for that, to approach this in a more kind of agile, incremental, experimental way to help attract entrepreneurs and innovators into this kind of problem space. And so one example within Wales is the SBRI Centre of Excellence, which is very much focused on kind of well-being and health, but it's certainly worth having a look at some of the open challenges that are available at the moment, but also some of the past ones as well. Scotland have been running one of the most successful, in my view, examples of this over many years, called CivTech. Again, all of their former challenges are published openly, so it's worth having a look at those. And there's quite a diverse range, spanning a number of different kind of challenge areas. There's the former GovTech Catalyst that was set up by GDS a number of years ago. It's since been mothballed, but the information about the approach taken and some of the challenges that were taken through that process are still published in the public domain. Links to all of these are provided here. That also, so all three of these run off the SBRI pre-commercial procurement process as well. And a very recent one I came across, just having a quick noodle around the gov.uk blogs. This one from the Government Actuaries Department about leveraging generative AI in their work, which was published just last month. So yeah, that's quite interesting, as it covers what was interesting when I read it is actually it's covering some what many people might consider boring areas, but these are really critical kind of areas where there are inefficiencies and opportunities to improve decision making, where, for example, there's a high degree of use of spreadsheets for managing data, as well as other things like code reviews. But yeah, worth having a look at that as an example. There's also existing help and available resources. So again, you're not alone. Again, reference to the service standards for Wales. That includes several references through to the gov.uk service manual for helping teams to make good decisions in their delivery. The guidelines for AI procurement that I've mentioned heavily in the previous section. There's a common route to all of these, and that's the Technology Code of Practice. And quite specifically, I think it's point 9 within the Tech Code of Practice, which is about integrating and adapting technology, and that has specific guidance around meeting user needs through emerging technology, for example, as well as like broader considerations for your technical architecture and how you should be approaching that from an ethics perspective. And as I already mentioned, the service manual, which is a fantastic kind of collection of guidance. I've included here as I mentioned in my introduction, a link through to the KEED Procurement Centre of Excellence project that we're working on with the Welsh Government. This is very much about a community-based approach to helping to build capacity in areas, not exclusively, but on technology procurement, but just procurement and commercial very generally. But I think there's a really interesting opportunity that we could look at the intersection between the role and responsibility of the Centre for Digital Public Services and the Welsh Government. And I think, yeah, I know that we've actually got the permission to write a keyed guest blog post on this webinar for that. And I think there will be other areas where we could focus on areas of mutual interest, like TechNet Zero. There's also the Digital Data and Technology Buyers Community of Practice that the Crown Commercial Service run. That's a kind of a recent evolution from what was the Buying Digital Community that was launched some years ago, which is all about helping public sector buyers to become more used to and familiar with outcomes-based approaches, mainly focused around like digital marketplace frameworks. But again, this is where I think we could there's a great opportunity to bring people together to kind of share their experiences, share their lessons learned, and learn from each other, so that we can help to kind of build that collective capacity across the whole UK public sector, but perhaps starting from the Welsh public sector context. On the right-hand side of the screen, we've got some additional resources that I mentioned that are referenced from the guidelines for AI procurement, and this is the AI Procurement in a Box collection, which was developed in collaboration with the World Economic Forum. This includes a number of different case studies from the UK, the Food Standard Agency, and what was the Department for Business, I can't remember what it stands for there, Energy and Industrial Strategy, I think, BEIS as it was. And so they're talking about their approaches, and actually their route to market that they used was the Digital Outcomes and Specialist Framework available through the digital marketplace. There's a DVSA case study, the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, where they also use the Digital Outcomes and Specialist Framework. And that case study was developed by my former team. It brings together a number of different resources, including how they then use the kind of principles within the AI procurement guidelines to then look at what was working for them, and also the areas that they felt were more challenging. So that's quite a useful, practical insight into what the DVSA found that going through that process for them. Also then specifically the World Economic Forum guidelines, and also some overseas insights from Brazil and how they found when they were then implementing those guidelines within their local context. So I think also I think that's the final slide, but just in kind of closing, there's some really interesting opportunities by looking beyond our borders. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago in the Netherlands, organised by the IDC, where we were talking about social value through data and artificial intelligence. And there were members of European governments there, including Catalonia and Flanders, which we know are countries and regions of strategic interest to the Welsh government. So I think there's an opportunity here to look at how we might leverage those relationships in areas of mutual interest, such as AI and tech and procurement, to help start to share information and learnings from across a broader kind of public sector landscape. So I think that's the end of our slide. So thank you very much. And back to you. I'll stop sharing here, and yeah, look forward to questions.
Thank you very much, Warren. Super informative. I'm always glad to broaden my perspectives and horizons with commercial questions. It's not my background, so but there are no boundaries in all of these things. Like we say, multidisciplinary teams, we all bring each other's perspectives and we help each other out. I was particularly interested in was it a Wardley map? I wrote it down. Wardley map. I'd not seen one of those before, so I'll be digging into a bit of a rabbit hole with those this afternoon. I imagine that was a lot of information in there. I guess we will open up to any questions. I'll give you all an opportunity to feedback now. I did have a window open with some of them, but I lost it. So I'll just give everybody a couple of seconds to type in any last minute questions.
Jack, it's David. Whilst people are doing that, I just wanted to say from my side, look, this is a new, novel, can be complex environment. There are people doing this. There are people dabbling in this. There are people who wanted to learn about it. We are more than happy to work with people to widen that learning. And if there are people on this call that would benefit from a great session with yourselves at CDPS, and we can jamboard some of this. This is the type of stuff that Warren and I have done in our past with new novel subjects, like cloud when that was new. So yeah, any opportunity to get in a room or jamboard some risks, ideas, and sharing of knowledge the offer is there.
Definitely. And I think I'd like to echo that there isn't a right or wrong person to speak to with this. If you're worried about something, you're concerned about something, you've got an idea, you're not sure who to speak to, reach out to myself, anybody from the CDPS team who have been chatting away in the message log, or the folks at Kershaw, and we'll find the right people to ask. Normally, we'd be getting all of us in a room to talk about these things and sort of set a bit of a path that we could all follow in the future. If you've got a concern or something that you'd like more information of, most people are going to be thinking a similar thing. So it's always worthwhile having that conversation, and we'll see what we can do. We've got one question that I'd seen already. I can see more things are coming in from Simon, asking about the service standards for Wales, and if we need technology standards for Wales and data standards for Wales to help us use our procurement, help us use and procure requirement setting in AI. It's a really good question. It's something that we've referred to quite a number of times here already in the session. Warren called it out several times, the digital service standards for Wales. These aren't a static set of standards. We've recently set up a standards working group. It's a pan-Wales group of people from representing health, local authorities, arm's length bodies, Welsh government, bringing together those kind of perspectives so that we can assess the current standards for Wales, make sure that they're working, bring feedback from the people who are actually applying them, but also bring in other bits of guidance. The delicate balance that we need to get right here is not reinventing the wheel. So lots of the pieces of guidance that Warren has shared today, things like the technology code of practice, things like the guide for procuring AI, what we need to do is leverage that good work that's already been done and has been tested by a wide set of people, but make that really tailor fit to Wales. So to take it, to make sure that none of that is referencing things that are not as applicable in Wales, or making sure that we still meet our requirements for things like the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. We need to make sure that they work for Wales. So that standards working group will be selecting bits of guidance. We've selected one piece already, the algorithmic transparency reporting standard as was developed by the Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation. We're taking that in isolation because it sits quite well on its own. and seeing how that works for Welsh organisations, gaps they find. Again, this is all very conversational. It's very early days. There's no entirely wrong way of doing it. We need to find out where the gaps in being able to meet these requirements for accountability, safety, transparency are need extra support from CDPS, from the likes of Kershaw, to allow people to deploy AI safely and responsibly. So it's a balancing act, and it's definitely something that we're looking at. But the wheels are in motion with that now, and we'll only get that better by listening to the type of folks that are dialed in today. So thanks for the question, Simon. Just have a skim
Jack,
through.
there was another question from Simon that I nominated to answer live. It's quite nicely framed, and I'll just read out. Is there a danger of Welsh public sector falling foul of snake oil salesmen if we're not intelligent buyer? I think, well, that is a risk. However, I think a lot of the recommendations that we've included, which are irrespective of the technology approach, should help to minimise the risk of kind of inadvertently locking yourself into something which may not meet user needs or might not give you the freedom and flexibility to adapt to whatever your needs might be. And I think it's really fundamental that a multidisciplinary and cross-functional team is assembled from the beginning, and that they are active participants of the early market engagement, and that early market engagement is cast to a broad as an audience as possible. And so I think if those first steps haven't been put in place, then I think the risk of kind of like assumptions being made or suboptimal decisions being made are likely to increase. So I think it's really, really important that we kind of bring that in. So also discuss this among the community, because it's an emerging area. And I know actually the point that was raised yesterday at ProcureX during the keynote arena presentation from Derek Walker, the Future Generations Commissioner for Wales. He was saying that procurement is really on his radar as a priority for the next period going forward. And I think there's definitely an opportunity to kind of look at because they've been approached for support on public procurement generally. So something around like, okay, wellbeing for future generations act, procurement and commercial and technology on this area, I think could be a really interesting kind of triumvirate of perspectives onto this space. And I know we'd be very keen to support that from both a CDPS and key perspective.
And would you say, Warren, that I certainly feel it, that Wales is in a much better position to avoid these kind of snake oil, like people trying to inflate the kind of claims around their products because of things like the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. I always see it as an excellent kind of defense for that, because we're getting to the cause of the ask of the products. We're getting really into if this is a good thing to do. It's a very direct question with regards to procurement.
Yes, I think I would say absolutely. However, we need to make sure that the teams are equipped and tooled in order to turn the legislation, in its broadest sense, the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, as well as the others that I was mentioning in the opening slides, into practical action. What do I need to, as a procurement and commercial practitioner and a digital data and technology team, what do we need to do differently tomorrow that helps us to embed those principles, those ways of working, and the four lenses into our day-to-day action? And I think that's really key. And I think that's certainly where we've seen people kind of asking for support, because turning that into practical action is really what's going to help.
No, excellent. I can see as well, we've got a shout out for the Cyber Innovation Hub at Cardiff University. Again, getting back to that idea of data, people exposing the data responsibly, exposing the right amount of data that's been anonymized, pseudonymized, protected, and used in AI data products. We need to be very deliberate and very considered when doing that. So it raises the importance of things like cybersecurity, data protection, having your data and your foundational kind of data architecture arranged as well. So it's a good prompt to get all of those good basics in. I think that's it for questions. I can see that Mike has reminded everybody that we do have a specific session in the plan, in the pipeline for the Future Generations Act. I think it's a very good opportunity to tie everything together. It's a thread that's run through all of these sessions, and I think having an explicit one on it is going to be very useful. Warren mentioned practical applications. This is our opportunity at CDPS to plug a little bit of the work that we're doing. As we've said before, we're very interested in supporting the Welsh public sector to seize the opportunities of AIs, but also of AI and automation, but to also be very mindful of the risks and the considerations that we need to and challenges that we need to address in applying it. What we're doing at the minute is working very closely with the WLGA to learn more about how AI and automation is being used across Wales. Once we've done that, we'll have a much better idea of how to support the rollout and using those opportunities that have been mentioned throughout these series. Currently, we've got 9 interviews booked in with representatives from across different arm's length bodies and local authorities. We've got a bit of a list of people from across Wales there that we're represented, but we're conscious of the fact that we've only got time for interviews quite in depth. People's time is limited as well. We want to spread that net as far and as wide as possible. So supporting those more in-depth interviews, we've got surveys that we can send links out to. I'm sure Mike will be sending a link through to everybody who's come today as willful participants. If you could use those links, have a look through the agenda, the questions, give us a response if you can. It just makes us more representative in the support that we can give to the Welsh public sector in deploying AI and automation and supporting you to use these tools in the best way possible. So a link will be going out with that after this webinar, I would have expected. And whilst we're on the subject of plugging things, if you've enjoyed the webinar today or any of the other webinars that we've run, the next in the series is in December. We've got the Alan Turing Institute coming back again to talk about managing bias in AI. So obviously we've referred to bias as one of the big kind of potential pitfalls of things that you have to consider when rolling out an AI tool or anything using an algorithm. This is going to be hopefully giving us a bit more of a practical application, steps that we can take to mitigate that AI bias, that potential AI bias, and deploying it in a safe and secure way for to minimize the impact on people and citizens. So that's the 7th of December. I will probably be running that one as well. So I'll see you all there. Mark it in your calendars nice and early. And I think that's everything to say on that. 3 in a row for plugs. We've considered the importance of multidisciplinary teams with procurement today. This isn't the benefits of it are far-reaching. It's in part of everything we do here at CDPS. We really value the input of multiple perspectives when doing any piece of work, and we found that an excellent way of developing content that is bilingual from the very start and clear for users and service owners is Trio Rating. Trio Rating, if you've not heard of it before, is a way of developing bilingual content for services. We've published a book at this year's National Eisteddfod. The book is available in a physical copy, or we have a free download copy. So there are links that will be part of I can see them going into the chat now. So have a look through this, see if it's applicable to you. We think that we've found that it's really useful internally. This is something we've developed in-house and we're rolling out to everybody. We've got really good feedback on it. So excellent way of making your services bilingual, developing that bilingual content from the very start, instead of potentially doing a more traditional way of things where you go back after the fact and have a bit of a 2-tier system with your bilingual content. But other than that, it just leaves me to wrap up. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Diolch for joining us this morning. If you want to share this link with anybody in your organizations, we'll be up on YouTube very soon. If you want to drop back and ask me any questions, if you're out for a walk later in the autumn air and you think of anything that you've missed that you would have liked to probe us on, get in touch with us. We're always open here in CDPS. And as Warren extended an invite, if you want to talk about any of this, we'll be more than happy to set up a conversation with you. This is how these things start, and we get the ball rolling, and we'll snowball from there. Warren, David, anything more to say from you? And the last thanks from me go to the Welsh Government and the support that we've had from there. Mike Thomas, I think, is on the call as well. Their team internally have helped us develop all the content today, so we wouldn't have been able to do this without them. So as always, thanks to them. Mike Erskine, I'm sure will tell me if I've missed anybody else out that is supposed to have been called out there, but I think that's us. Thank you very much.